All right, 2025 ad, and we are off to the races with AI. 2025 sounds like to me kind of a futuristic year. Maybe it will be. We're kind of living in the future. And this podcast is going to be largely about taking stock of where we are and then predicting into the future. It's really difficult to predict, almost impossible, but I think it's a good exercise because it forces you to think about where things are going so that you can adapt. Like you have to get your thoughts together and just take a guess. Where are we? What are we doing? Where are things going? And if you have that, at least you have the thought, I think you're ahead of the game. Even if some of the predictions don't turn out to be right, you're at least forcing yourself to go through the exercise of like figuring out what's going on rather than having just a messy mind.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see where AI is going this year. I mean, 2024 and I guess just before was interesting, but it was kind of a lot of hype that didn't really live up to expectations in my opinion yet. Like there's a lot of cool stuff happening, but I don't really see any real use cases in 2024 that really blew me away yet. Like there's a lot of cool models and things that can do something neat, but did you really use them to create anything amazing last year? Probably not.
We use them to create content about AI more than, well, actually, I did use it, I would say, to edit, like just sort of speed up things and brainstorm and do our emails. And like even this is using AI. There's a lot of AI going on in the background, but I take the point that a lot of times you do open it up, you expect, you're going to build something, but it's that last mile problem like with shipping, right? Like you get most of the way, but it's not good enough to actually use at the end of the day. Like if they say, hey, here are 100 social media posts you can use, all created by AI. Well, none of them are good enough to actually use and get any traction. So you might as well use none of them. And then you've just wasted your time playing around with it. So I think that's the point you're getting at. How do we get up to that level of it actually being usable in your work and in your life rather than, hey, this is pretty cool. They almost did it but didn't quite.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you can think about visual examples which help to kind of articulate that point. Like at the start, AI image generators, for example, they had a lot of people that looked not terrible, but they might have like six fingers and like a lot of weird things, and they just didn't look right. They didn't look human. But now it's coming to a point where they look better than kind of anything you can even create. It's kind of crazy how quickly it's become really useful.
Yeah, so the images are, I would say the images are at the point now, and fortunately for us, we can talk about it later, what we're making with our image stuff. Images are kind of almost the best thing now because they are actually usable if you know what you're doing. Whereas video is very far behind actually usable in most cases. I mean, there are some people who can play around with it all the time. It's too expensive too and get something, but images are there, and then like we said, text is often not there. But anyway, to go into our predictions and kind of taking stock, let's talk quickly about Grok 3 from XAI, former Twitter. Apparently that is coming out in 3 to 4 weeks. That's the rumor. Do you use Grok too much when you're on X? I actually use it quite a bit, even the free version. Even though we pay for ChatGPT, I'm still using Grok 2 quite a bit, and I'm curious what you think of that and what you expect from Grok 3.
Well, what I like about Grok too is it's less censored obviously than ChatGPT and other things. Well, not censored at all really. And I think you can get different types of answers. So it's good to use different models and just see what you get. And that's what I often do because you really do get totally different answers. So you can use them like together. So I think it is fun to use, especially when you've been using ChatGPT. It's easy to get into kind of a rut and kind of do the same things, get the same style going, and you don't want to keep doing it. So I use it just for kind of a difference and a different take on stuff that's
Yeah,
probably
so
less censored.
it's good to use all of them for that purpose because they are different. Another thing is to your point about you can get stuck in a rut. It is easy, and it goes to show how important the branding is or just whatever you use first. It's like whatever you're using for your insurance or your cable company or your internet provider or your cell phone. Like once you get in there and you start using one, it is actually difficult to switch. You're just too lazy to do it. Um, and it works definitely in this as well. So a lot of the companies are really fighting to get you to use their product first. ChatGPT is winning on that, even if the product is not as good in a lot of cases. But in addition to it being uncensored or far less censored, which is great because it treats you like an adult instead of telling you, oh, you're not allowed, we're not allowed talking about this. The other thing that's good about it is it's way better than the other ones for up to date info because it searches not only the web, but it often searches 15 to 25 recent X posts, um, which could have come out like in the last 15 seconds or whatever. So if you're looking for a new topic that's changing all the time, that's a great way to interact with sort of live, up to date stuff rather than, like Chat GPT searching the internet. They're looking at news articles, basic, like worse than searching Google. I mean, they're just pulling up it's much worse for search, so you're less lives. That's another thing I like about Grok 2. And then Grok 3 coming up, Musk has spent a fortune on networking a zillion of these NVIDIA, what do you call them? I don't know, H1, whatever they have.
GPUs, yeah,
Yeah,
the
like,
GPUs that process the AI models essentially.
so he's got them all lined up, and I there was a limit they thought before he did it. I think it was like 30,000. Might be wrong that number, but that's what I remember. They thought that was the limit of how you could have them synced up and communicating with each other, and he's far exceeded that somehow. So apparently, how they train it, what they're expecting from Grok 3, is possibly a lot better than anything else. But you also have to take it with a grain of salt because sometimes he can be quick and overhyping things as well. But it looks promising. Like a lot of things behind the scenes are saying, he got off to a late start, originally co-founded OpenAI, started this way later, but it would not surprise me if he caught up and went ahead.
Well, he doesn't mind moving quickly and dumping a lot of money into it, which he obviously will be doing it. He's amazing at raising capital, and that's the main thing about doing this. You buy tons of GPUs and you get them working. So really you can compete quickly using existing technologies. And as you said though, like I think ChatGPT really is what I hate about it is like their O1 model I think is really good now, for example, but it's so outdated. If you ask it a question and be like, "Sorry, I only have data from like 2023." And for some reason, it's not allowed to search the web. You have to use GPT 4.0 still to search the web. So basically, you can get a good answer, but especially for me, I do a lot of coding stuff and it's out to date. And really, it makes it useless essentially because it's not up to date. It's using an old model that just simply won't work anymore.
But if there's, I mean, not an old model, but like not up to date, like web information. But do you actually use it much? I find I don't. I think just the
Uh,
fact that they tell me there's a limit made me not use it that much. And then
I,
I don't.
Yeah, I do for it actually, to be honest though, I've been using AI coding assistants to build things like small web applications and software. And to be honest, if I get an error in that, even like Claude 3 Sonnet, whatever 3.5, whatever the latest version is, it's great. But sometimes I'll put it in O1, the exact error, and explain the problem in detail because I give it all the information. If you actually give it the information, it's great, but the problem is you have to put so much in. It's kind of annoying to use, but honestly, for those cases, it's super powerful. And then they have the O3 model coming up that's probably going to have the same issues, though. It'll be super even smarter. But if it doesn't have real-time information again, I hope they're going to have it searching more. And even can you even I don't even think you can upload images for some reason on the O1, for example, to get it, some of the data.
Yeah.
So you can't use it 100%. And that's really limits the use cases because I use it for multimedia stuff all the time, most of it, most LLMs. And if I can't do it, it's kind of annoying.
But you
You know,
find with coding and the limitations, you still like it.
Again, it's more of like once you get in a loop, and that's what AI does. Like if you keep asking it the same questions, even in different variations, sometimes like whatever model you're using, you'll hit a dead end, and it's like you're not going to get a better answer almost ever. So once you hit that dead end, it's good to use something else like O1 or whatever, or 4.0 with search, or Claude Sonnet, or Grok 2 currently. Really
Right.
anything that will get you a different answer, or Perplexity, anything.
Perplexity, I use that a lot. Now, another thing, so I'm predicting, this is not a big prediction yet, but more competition to make, because there's more competition, they're going to be making AI less censored. We've got Zuckerberg coming out and saying Facebook's going to be less censored with the whole Trump thing, cutting, you probably saw that, right? They're not doing the fact checking anymore, going to go to Musk's model. So he'll be doing that with Meta. Everybody really notices, like the conversations behind the scenes. Nobody likes using a censored LLM. I've heard Altman say, there's got to be different levels of this. So there's going to be a huge push to make all these AI models less censored, which makes it more powerful. Like as they're going through these bottlenecks and not getting that much better, just taking off the training wheels should help. Like that already will make them more powerful once they take away everything to slow them down. But then on the other side of the coin, there's going to be government pressure from different agencies to censor it. So there's going to be that back and forth push and pull. Like for example, I read the Cybertruck bomber in front of the Trump hotel, which was ridiculous and terrible. They're saying in the news he used Chat GPT. I mean, everybody uses it, so whatever that means. But they're putting it out there that like that would be a real safety issue, and I think most people can agree that if it is actually the case that someone's getting bomb information and using it because of that, that would be a real safety issue. And they will crack down on that kind of thing if, I mean, they're going to be pushing for that type of safety. And nobody can really argue that if that type of thing's going on.
Absolutely. So safety is a huge concern, but there's another concern that it's not just the US that are creating these models. Like there's other countries now. So if they put too much constraints on them in the US, Chinese are starting to move super fast, making amazing stuff really, really quickly. And so they don't want to, they don't want to slow that down because you're really competing with them because it's national security too. All this AI, like it's military stuff we're talking about. You don't wanna be behind as a country in any of this stuff. So
Right.
I think
So
that's
they,
a risk.
yeah, that's maybe the big one that's also going to keep it less regulated because they don't want everybody switching over to using the Chinese ones. And the Chinese ones, some of them are probably better than people are giving them credit for because of the terrible branding, right? It feels like, oh, it's Chinese, I don't want to use it, or it's got a weird name, or I don't know how to use it. So, like, I'm not going to, whatever the case. But if you actually go compare them side by side, it's pretty surprising if you're trying to be fair about it, how much they're catching up and even surpassing in a lot of ways. And they got a bunch of data and they got a bunch of nerds making it. It's like, it's no shock that, they could pull it off, honestly.
Well, it's also because, well, we lived in China before, and they own the factories. This is where they make all the chips, especially before. Like, they have amazing plants, and apparently they're making, competitive chips to NVIDIA. NVIDIA you'll always hear about, but these Chinese factories can make things that are amazing for, like, way cheaper and move really quickly because they don't have the government red tape there as much for that kind of stuff, which is surprising in China. You might think they're not allowed to move because it's a communist state or whatever, but they actually move quickly with technology when they want to.
So, but then to go back on that point is for their safety and security, the way they define it. I mean, it is surprising in a way that like the way they've locked down with their new government who's been there for about 10 years. Like we were in more of the heyday and we found they have cracked down on this stuff. I mean, there are a lot of freedoms that people don't talk about, but there's also like, horrible internet censorship. You can't even check your Gmail there without a VPN. They're very paranoid with this type of thing. So if their own LLMs get, really good and powerful and can do a lot of stuff, they must be also freaking out about, I mean, they could crack it down and cut it in half in 2 seconds if they start to find like, geez, this is really waking up the citizens. And it's so easy to imagine that causing much worse than the Cybertruck bomber there.
100%. But I think again, going back to the point is I think all countries are worried about falling behind in AI, so they're just kind of forgetting about it right now. Who knows what's going to happen? I think it's going to be exciting for that reason. They don't want to go behind, so they're moving forward at a rapid pace anyway. So we don't know what's going to
Yeah,
happen,
or
and
the
that's the cool
Chinese
part.
might ban it for their own citizens, but then let it out in the wild to collect data and whatever else, right?
Well, they also
Like
use
what
it
they do with
for
the other, like the TikTok.
100%. They might use their own versions just for themselves for whatever purposes. And the funny thing is, like, people have been talking about driverless cars and everything. They already have that in China for quite a while. They don't talk about that as much. And even like Elon Musk, he's trying to make X like WeChat, which is a Chinese thing, which to be honest is amazing because it does everything and everybody uses it. So he's smart enough to realize that they actually do some good stuff, and he doesn't mind taking a page out of their books once in a while, probably.
Yeah, so there's a lot of push and pull. You're sounding a little overly positive about. I mean, you should be, I think, citing some of the negatives, which there are many over there.
Well, actually, to be honest, I like to say positives because I actually am a little bit worried about the government, and I still like to go back there. So I like to be pretty positive.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fair enough. So that was just a government rant then.
Yeah, that was a propaganda for China. So let me get
Okay.
in with visas next time.
Right. Okay. So now we know where he's coming from, trying to get back in there. But all kidding aside, and that's not even 100% kidding. That's the funny part. All right. And then Altman with OpenAI, the drama continues. I didn't mention this on the notes. Did you hear what his younger sister said?
Why don't you fill us in? Fill us in on this. I like when you tell the
So,
story.
okay, I'm trying to make it in a funny mood, but I have to tell the audience there's nothing funny about this. I'm obviously. So she like the drama continues with this guy. He seems soft spoken. How bad can he be? And I don't know. I'm not commenting on this, and I don't believe in saying something or convicting somebody in the court of public opinion. I have no idea. His family says didn't happen. He says didn't happen. But she goes to court, accuses him of sexual abuse. Many years of this, like terrible. His own sister. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the background. I mean, just to have your sister accuse you of that.
Well,
Um,
I agree. I saw the headline. To be honest, I didn't read much about it. I was just kind of shocked to even hear that that was a thing, possibly. And who knows? Maybe I don't know the relationship. Maybe it's some kind of weird shakedown. A lot of people have weird siblings. There might be one really successful one, and then they have one that just wants some money or attention. I have no idea if that's the case, which it very well
Not to
could be.
blame the guy, but you think of all the people who left, all the drama with him, and then you add in this without a cute. Like, I'm not saying it. I don't know, but I mean, jeez.
It's interesting if that's true, if she's accusing him, it still says something. I don't know what it says, but even if it's found to be nothing, I mean, that's kind of a weird thing for, a family member to say about you.
Yeah, the point is they're unpredictable with all of the quitting, the drama, everything that goes on. So who knows if they're going to be in the lead, whatever the case may be.
Right.
All
So
right,
basically, went on a little bit of a tangent there, talking about some political stuff. So really, we don't know what's going to happen. I think that there's so much uncertainty in the air right now, and there's so many new companies from different countries, a lot in the U.S. that are amazing. Certainly not just OpenAI, which was the original one with ChatGPT. Claude is like Anthropic is like that's to me that's a better company. I think from a lot of the things where they're going. It seems it's built into a lot of powerful software now and more for enterprise stuff. I could see that overtaking it, to be honest. I think they have like a $60 billion valuation now already. So they're going to have a lot of money. So that could overtake it easily. Obviously, Grok with Elon Musk at the helm might go wild as well. It's hard to know who's going to be the leader of the pack. Who would you predict by the end of 2025? What's your prediction, just off the head, off the shot? What do you got?
Okay, I think we're going to be in the same position as we are right now in the sense that it's going to be unclear. So I think Grok 3 will be out. It'll be impressive, maybe not as much as some. OpenAI will still do its thing. OpenAI's O3 will come out and it'll be, good with something. Everything's going to get better and we won't have a clear leader just like we don't right now. And if someone says, well, OpenAI is the clear leader, well, yeah, financially, but I mean, like, actually, like a better thing that everyone should be using, whether or not the marketing's there, I think we'll be in the same spot in terms of it being murky.
Yeah, and I agree. I think AI now, it's like even if you come up with something and get ahead of the pack for like a month, because of AI, they're going to have all these tools that say like, okay, let's get the AI to build that new thing really quickly and buy a bunch of GPUs from Nvidia and get, as long as you have the money and the resources, you can come back quickly once you look what everyone else is doing. You have a first mover advantage, but you also have a last mover advantage to see what's the good feature and then say, okay, this was good. Now I'm going to 10x you by doing the same thing you did, but even on a bigger scale. So it's
So
easy
the
to
first
compete in
mover
that sense.
advantage is good for the business sense, but it's not in the business sense, but it's not necessarily good for making a better product. So we're
Right.
talking about who's going to have a better product. And then it's also the copycat phenomenon where if somebody does something good, well, everyone else just copies it, just like cell phones and cars and stuff. I mean, some are slightly better than others, you could argue, but like at the same price point, almost everything, if you're being really fair about it and stripping the branding out, is pretty similar in capabilities, right?
No,
Like cell phones, right?
100%.
Anything that's like $600 is about the same if you're being fair about it. At least
Well,
it's not night
especially
and day.
right, especially now, and again, because things can move a lot faster. Even everything, hardware moves faster because of the AI, and they can build like robot factories. And I think that's where Musk will come out. I think robotics and things like that, he's going to integrate that obviously with Tesla and manufacturing. And I think that's his part of his big plan. He's doing that obviously for self-driving cars, but also for factories. Like I wouldn't be surprised by the end of 2025 if he has factories that are totally autonomous with his Grok 3 or whatever embedded in it and vision, and these robots are just working and
And even
taking
like the
jobs and
Tesla
stuff.
AI intelligence that you can't really use for anything else, but it's a lot of video, it's a lot of intelligence in there that they could use that in the factory. It's just not really a language thing.
Right. It's not
But
it's
he's
not there yet, but it's that's what I'm saying. There's going to be these underlying things that you're going to see more use cases. And again, I think with robotics, like what is it? CES just came out as well. There's tons of new robots and different models, and that's what Nvidia is talking about too. They think that's going to be the next thing is the robotic arm after it. The
and
software
the
comes
neat thing too,
first.
how much you can say they call them dark factories. They can all be in pitch black, so you don't even need the light. You don't really need much heat. You don't need
Well, you
any
don't even need it.
workers. You don't
You don't
need
need a good
any.
location either. Like we could have them in Canada and ship them all up where nobody lives. Like that's where it should be, and get the robots working up there when the land's worth nothing. Like you don't need a factory anywhere near a good
You
location,
mean
so it
like
should
up in the
save a lot.
north of Canada, not like Canadian
Yeah,
land in general is quite expensive, like where
no, that's
anybody
it. But
lives.
well, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
exactly. So
yeah,
it
that's
doesn't need
one
to be
thing because the
anywhere.
energy. There's a lot of spots, right? So
Hmm.
that's potentially cheap if they can get that down because there aren't a lot of constraints. You don't have to pay for anybody. Um, and then what else are we dealing with here? Yeah, so the robotics will be huge, and then yeah, like to your point about. But a lot of people say, "Oh, he overpaid for Twitter, 45 billion. It's not worth it. The advertisers are quitting." But when you tie it into everything else he has, that's not obvious to me that that wasn't a great thing for him to have at any price.
Of course, he
Like he
wanted
could.
something. He wanted one thing, like with a ton of data with real people. It didn't really matter what it was. If he uses it for the other things properly, like even only Tesla and robotics and like learning from it, and that new Grok model, if that's how any he abandons it eventually and it becomes like a garbage and it's just a testing playground, to be honest, that's probably more than worth it just for that. He only needs it just for getting the data and trying things.
And like he launches Grok through Twitter, which a bunch of people are on. So even if Twitter or X isn't making much money or losing it, it's like a launching pad to a site and an app that everybody's on already, where they
It
can
is,
use
and
Grok and then probably pay for that if it's good.
it's still
As one
integrated with.
example, or just all the info that he gets, plus his own megaphone to, like, I don't want to sound like a Musk fanboy. I'm just trying to be realistic. Like, a lot of people, they're in this whole everything he says is godly. I don't really care about going in that direction. I'm just saying I can see, if you're looking big picture, how you might how it's just difficult to say whether it's a good or a bad deal. It's a bad deal if you look at like Twitter ad rates,
Well, it's a
and what he
terrible deal
pays.
right now. Exactly. It's a terrible deal if he uses it as what Twitter was before, but he doesn't seem to be doing that at all. And maybe I think he even realized he's like, okay, it was a bad deal in some sense. He even tried to back out, I think, at one point. But he's like, now, okay, now maybe it's an awesome deal. He's like, fine, I'm just going to compete with OpenAI then and make it a good deal. So he just transformed the business into something else super useful and maybe way more valuable than even he thought. Like, who knows if this was his master plan? Probably not. Things
And
change
it's
so
hard to
much.
go everybody's scared to go against him now because he can just tweet your head off, because everybody listens to every peep he says. He's in the news all the time. So difficult to judge there. But one positive I see going for that, the whole thing is like Meta's now getting out of censorship and people have to compete with him. So if Grok 3 is better, everyone else is gonna have to make their models a little bit less censored and less annoying in
Well,
that way.
they might have to, but I mean, Meta's certainly getting a little bit of pushback from what they did recently with creating those like AI avatars and actually posting with them. Not even real people. So people wanted real people on the platform, and maybe they didn't like the idea of having AI, making content and doing a bunch of that kind of stuff. But it's an interesting direction. To be honest, I'm not sure what I think about it. I don't like that kind of social media that much. So I'm not the best person to answer such a question. I've just heard that some negatives, but maybe there's probably some positives too that you don't hear about, and there's a reason why
Yeah.
they're doing it, I'm
I mean,
sure.
I like Meta as a stock. I've done well with it. Facebook as a thing to use, I don't use it. So it's hard for me to really comment on. I certainly won't be following any of these AI influencers. But then again, we make those for other companies to use, and they are useful on our Cartario
Well,
product that you should absolutely check out.
I think it
Um,
depends how you use them. Like, we're using them more like having a beautiful woman holding your product, for example, that looks good. So it doesn't really matter if it, to me, honestly, if even if I knew it was an AI generated image and a fake person, as long as it is the product and it looks cool and you can do cool stuff with it, to me that's not a problem because it is what it's saying that it is. It's not a trick. There's no like phishing or scam about it. It's just much easier to make that, so you don't need to hire your own model. I think that's when it's cool.
your point is
Um,
there's no important deception. Like, for example, if a beautiful AI model makes you feel good about a product and then you want to go buy it, but the product's legit, you didn't know the model was AI, you're not really tricked in an important way. But if you go on a dating website and you see these beautiful AI images, then you go out on a real date and the date doesn't look like the images, that is legit deception. I think that's where you're going with that. So you could be deceived depending on the situation, but just the fact that it's AI, if the fact that you think it's a real person, but it doesn't matter in that case, then it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter at all, in my opinion. Just like you can actually train yourself, in which we do on Cartario, as your model, and then you can put yourself in any situation. Basically, it just makes it so you don't have to create these images, even though they are real because they are you. It's just you don't have to make them, and they look amazing
Like,
afterwards.
right,
So I don't.
like upload 8 to 10 photos of yourself, and we were even doing it with pet dogs, and people were liking it. Right, you upload 8 to 10 photos of one thing, like yourself, your dog, your product. With Cartario, you upload those and then you train a model, then you have a custom model on that thing, and then you can create as many images that look amazing as you want. And there's no useful deception. There's no sense. It doesn't make sense to call that deception in any important sense.
No, to me,
And
that's
they're
just
very useful to have those images if you're promoting a business.
no, exactly, and it's to me, that's just an extension of Photoshop, and a lot of people even used to complain about that, "Oh, that was so Photoshopped." Well, that was so AI'd, like, what's the difference? People use digital, like, editors now. It doesn't really matter if there's an AI element, if it's the real thing, but just looks better. To me, I think that's a big distinction because it's not to me, that's not really AI, it's just like a good editor that you don't need a person to be the editor anymore. There's no difference really in that case.
So we're using the common sense versus the dogmatic approach. And so we're using common sense, which I think makes sense to think about this. Last thing, Ad, we'll wrap it up with agents, which we didn't talk about. A lot of people are calling this going to be the year of agents. What do you think on that front? AI agents.
I think AI agents are amazing and they've been around for a while, but they're coming into so real people can use it. And for example, I used to make a website or try to make different software with ChatGPT. But the problem before is you give a prompt and then you need to make another million prompts to get what you want and then test it on a server, design a user interface, put it somewhere and then use it. Now with like an agent, for example, a coding agent, here's an example. You could say, build me a website and put it on somewhere that someone can see, and it would do that for you. So it's a real use case, an end to end solution. And that's the biggest thing. It's not just giving me part of it, it's a full thing where the agents are like these basically the LLMs are talking to each other to make the final result, and it doesn't work perfectly, but you get the idea. It takes a lot of the legwork out, and that's why they're going to be big because really you can build a lot of stuff faster with no involvement. So even for some things, you might be like a they talked about a 10x coder. Maybe this will make people like a 100x coder or whatever because you can use these on top of what you're already doing.
Now, what about this? I've never heard this idea before, I don't think. But the idea that you might not even know you're using agents, just things might be more agent like. And for one example, I think O1 and probably more so O3 is kind of an agent loop in the background, right? Where you do one prompt and then you don't even really know you're not setting up agents, but it's just doing more for you because it sets it up itself. What do you think about that idea? That you don't even have to know if you're dealing with, just like if you're on Netflix, you don't have to know you're doing it, it's doing AI in the background. It just is.
For sure. I mean, agents will be running in the background for ads and stuff too. If you click on a button, they'll be watching what you do. They'll be analyzing your behavior and then giving you different things, sending you messages, even calling you on the phone in the future. It's just multiple steps working together. You won't know. And a lot of them will be like quasi agents where they'll do a few things, but they won't try to solve it's really how big of a problem are you going to solve and how many steps. So it's like an agent is kind of like a weird term because a lot of things aren't really agents in my opinion. They're just kind of like an LLM with a couple of steps. So like I wouldn't really call that an agent,
And
and
those
even
coding tools are kind of like agents, right? Where you
well they
do
are.
one
That's
prompt
why.
and then it goes and runs a whole bunch of prompts itself without asking you again.
Exactly. It adds new full features. And like the Replit, which I use, it has an agent thing which costs 25 cents each time you run it, and sometimes it messes up. But they also have an assistant, which is only 5 cents to run, which will just like fix like an error in the code and search for files and do one thing. It won't do like 20 things at once. So it's good for fixing something small. So that's kind of a distinction too. How much of it is really doing? Like what is it really, how many steps is it doing? How many interactions or loops is it running? And that's really all an agent is, just like how many things is it going to search the web, debug it, fix something, or like with what, or even like if you were a writing assistant, is it going to do a first draft, check it, have a fact checker, add a bunch of like research and links to your data, make it, put it in your voice, compare it to your other work. Like how many things is it doing at once? And that's really what agents are about, just doing many things that you're not involved in. So it really
So
could be
those
for
are gonna
anything.
come in big time, whether or not it's you have to know you're dealing with it, or it's just gonna be there. There's gonna be a lot more happening with one prompt. That's where
Right.
AI is going. So I think this is probably a good place to wrap up. You should definitely check out our email list and get all the hot tips. We'll put a link in the descriptions. Check us out, aigrowthguys.com. We're running a whole bunch of cool things. We did them last year and in the future. Cartario sign up, you can use it on your email with a free account to start off just to get access to some of the good image models and consider um, at least signing up for 1 month of a basic plan just to create these images of a custom model of yourself. You've probably never done it, and it works really well, and you can use these. So check that out as well. Are there any parting thoughts?
Not really. I think that's a good start to 2025. I'm pretty pumped about where we're going with this, and I think we're going to be making a lot more of these now that we got the flow going. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this, and we will hopefully see you next time.